Good evening. About 20 minutes ago, Roy didn't know he was leading songs, so. There's a unique group of people out in the world. They're a group of people I do not understand. They operate extremely different from what I think, how I just live my life. And when I look at them and I hear about them, I think, how is that possible? And some of you might be these people. That is light sleepers. I'm getting a look from my wife because she is a light sleeper. I am a heavy sleeper. You might be like me, where you didn't know you were a heavy sleeper until you got married. Because my wife, she'll hear a noise or something, bang in the house, and she'll say, "Did you hear that noise?" And, it's more like she has to shake me first. Then she says, "Did you hear that noise?" Or it rains in the middle of the night, we get up and she says, "Did you hear it thunder and lightning?" Or she says, "Did you hear the tornado rip the roof off the house?" And I'm like, what are you talking about? And so, like I said, I'm a heavy sleeper, and Jessica is a lighter sleeper. In fact, Jessica, she sleeps with earplugs. And earplugs are impressive things if you think about it. And they're kind of weird that you would squish this little piece of foam, stick it in your ear, and then noise seems to almost disappear, depending on how well of earplugs that you've got. And there's now different headphones, noise-canceling headphone, noise-canceling devices you put on over your ears. And so tonight, I want us to talk about sometimes in life, we can almost go about life, living life as if we've got earplugs in our ears. That we've got these noise-canceling headphones so that we can't hear anything. And I don't mean that we aren't listening to actual noises, although there are times that I do zone out and I'm not listening, and Jessica picks up on that and she snaps. Well, she doesn't snap at me. But I'm not talking about refusing to listen to other actual noises. I'm talking about refusing to listen to other things. And sometimes there are things we should refuse to listen to. Maybe it's movies or certain music. Maybe it's gossip. Maybe it's crude jokes. Maybe it's hatred. Those are times when we need to put in our earplugs, so to speak. But then there are times when we need to take out our earplugs and listen. Maybe we need to listen to the cries of the hungry. Listen to the cries of the poor or the oppressed. Maybe we need to take out our earplugs, listen to the truth. And then there are times when we need to listen to what we're going to be talking about tonight, and that's listening to wisdom. A few weeks ago, Mike spoke on Proverbs chapter 7, and he called it the immoral woman. And what Solomon is doing here in Proverbs is he's comparing the folly or foolishness to an adulterous woman. And that's in chapter 7. And then we come to chapter 8, and we've got another woman that represents wisdom. And later on, I'd encourage you to go back and read chapter 7 and then read chapter 8 and kind of compare, or not really compare, but contrast and look at the different personifications that Solomon does of foolishness and then also wisdom. But all that to say, tonight we're going to be focusing on Proverbs chapter 8. And so if you want to turn there in your Bibles, that's going to be our main text for tonight. Proverbs chapter 8. And we're talking about listening to wisdom. So Solomon begins in Proverbs chapter 8, verse 1. He says, "Does not wisdom call out? Does not understanding raise her voice? At the highest point along the way where the paths meet, she takes her stand. Beside the gate leading into the city at the entrance, she cries aloud. Like I said, chapter 8, we've got wisdom, and she's personified as this woman. And here in verses 1 through 3, it's this woman who's calling out. It says she's raising her voice. You know, it all goes back to that idea of the earplugs that I was talking about earlier. You know, wisdom is crying out to us. Wisdom's crying out to us, and we can choose to put in our earplugs and not listen, or we can choose to remove those earplugs and listen to wisdom. And you know, this idea of listening is presented all throughout the Bible. I thought it was interesting that Marty this morning talked about by your words, and he said that sometimes in our lives there's moments when we need to not speak and we need to listen. And listening is a powerful idea all throughout the Bible. 1 Samuel chapter 3, we have God calling to Samuel during the night, and Samuel thinks it's Eli that's actually calling him. Let's begin in 1 Samuel chapter 3, verse 6. Again the Lord called Samuel, and Samuel got up and went to Eli and said, "Here I am, you called me?" "My son," Eli said, "I did not call you. Go back and lie down." Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord. The word of the Lord had not yet been revealed to him. A third time the Lord called Samuel, and Samuel got up and went to Eli and said, "Here I am, you called me." Then Eli realized that the Lord was calling the boy. So Eli told Samuel, "Go and lie down, and if he calls you, say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening.'" So Samuel went and lay down in his place. The Lord came and stood there, calling as at the other time, "Samuel, Samuel." Then Samuel said, "Speak, for your servant is listening." You know, that's probably one of my favorite stories in the Bible, and it's really because of that phrase, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." You know, we could spend a whole evening just talking about that and how that could be, you know, what we need to be saying sometimes. But the key is listening. We have to take out our earplugs sometimes, and we have to be willing to listen. And so with that idea or concept of being willing to listen, let's continue on in Proverbs chapter 8. So we've got wisdom in verses 1 through 3, and it's talking about how she's calling out to us. And when I hear that idea of calling out, you know, I don't think of it as, you know, kind of whispering where wisdom's like, hey, over here. And I don't even imagine wisdom, you know, in how Solomon's personifying it, that, you know, just talking kind of a normal volume. I almost get this idea that wisdom is there, kind of, it says on the highest place, kind of where the paths meet, you know, noticeable, where everyone is going to see her. And she's got a megaphone, basically. And she's screaming at people, saying, "Listen to what I have to say, because what I have to say is important." Where to ignore wisdom, you'd almost have to do it intentionally, perhaps, because she's speaking so loud to us, trying to get our attention. And she says in verse 4, "To you, O people, I call out, I raise my voice to all mankind. You who are simple will gain prudence. You who are foolish, set your hearts on it." And she says, "Listen to me." She's saying, "Listen to me. Take in what I have to say. Take in wisdom and let it influence your life." Verse 6, "Listen, for I have trustworthy things to say. I open my lips to speak what is right. My mouth speaks what is true, for my lips detect wickedness. All the words of my mouth are just. None of them is crooked or perverse. To the discerning, all of them are right. They are upright to those who have found knowledge." She says, "Listen to what I have to say. What I have to say is worthwhile. You won't be disappointed if you listen to me. Take in my words." She continues on, Verse 10, choose my instruction instead of silver, knowledge rather than choice gold. I should be your top priority. Take me in, for wisdom is more precious than rubies, and nothing you desire can compare with her. She says that we are to choose wisdom over everything else, that wisdom should be our top priority. So the first 11 verses of this section is all about wisdom saying, you need to tune in and listen to me. Take out the earplugs so that you can listen, and maybe even remove the distractions so that you can listen to wisdom. Remove competing noises. Zero in, put your focus and attention on wisdom. Wisdom is something we all need to listen to. I think it's out there trying to get our attention. She's yelling for us to listen, but ultimately, as much or as loud as wisdom is yelling, no matter where she puts herself so that we can see her, the choice to listen is ultimately up to us. We have to choose to listen to wisdom. And she continues on in verse 12 to let us know what wisdom has to offer. I, wisdom, dwell together with prudence. I possess knowledge and discretion. To fear the Lord is to hate evil. I hate pride and arrogance, evil behavior and perverse speech. Counsel and sound judgment are mine. I have insight, I have power. By me kings reign and rulers issue decrees that are just. By me princes govern and nobles, all who rule on the earth. I love those who love me, and those who seek me will find me. With me are riches and honor, enduring wealth and prosperity. My fruit is better than fine gold. What I yield surpasses choice silver. I walk in the way of righteousness along the paths of justice, bestowing a rich inheritance on those who love me and make their treasures full. Wisdom speaks to us and tells us that one of the blessings or advantages of listening to wisdom is actually more blessings. One of those blessings is wealth. It talks about wealth, prosperity, and honor. And I think it's safe to say that this can be true. That if we are wise in our finances, or if we are wise with our money, then we can see the blessings that will come from that. If we are good stewards, then yes, blessings can come in the form of monetary ways. But as we look at this text, I don't get the impression that this is why we should seek wisdom. I don't get the impression that we should seek wisdom in order to be blessed in this world, in order to have prosperity, in order to have honor even. In fact, I think that if we seek wisdom for the sole purpose of having those things, then that's really not showing wisdom at all. That if we are seeking wisdom so that we can have that prosperity, that's not wise. Instead, I think what we find here in general is that listening to wisdom and walking with wisdom brings about blessings in all walks of life. You know, wisdom is seen in every area of our life. We can have wisdom when it comes to the material world. Looking at verses 18 through 21. With me are riches and honor, enduring wealth and prosperity. Verse 20, I walk in the ways of righteousness along the paths of justice, bestowing a rich inheritance on those who love me. But wisdom can also be seen in the social world, not just the material world. Verse 15, by me kings reign and rulers issue decrees that are just. By me princes govern and nobles, all who rule on the earth. So material world, social world. And then wisdom is also found in the spiritual world. Verse 13, to fear the Lord is to hate evil. I hate pride and arrogance, evil behavior, and perverse speech. Having wisdom means that we fear the Lord. Part of being wise or a wise follower of Christ is fearing the Lord. And that means, honoring God, walking with God, honoring God above everything else. So having wisdom, it can bless us in our material world. It can bless us in our social world. But ultimately, and more importantly, wisdom blesses us in our spiritual world. I don't want to spend too much time talking about how wisdom blesses us in the material world. I think we can see that if we are wise in ways God has blessed us, then we will be blessed through that. And when it comes to wisdom in our social world, if we show wisdom with our relationships, if we show wisdom with our friendships, then we will be blessed in that way. But wisdom is most important, I think, as Christians in the spiritual world and in our relationship with God. For it is when we are unable to show wisdom in our relationship with God that we have real problems, and problems that will influence other areas of our life. In verses 12 and 13, wisdom mentions items that go along with wisdom. And then it also mentions items that do not go along with wisdom. With wisdom, you have things like prudence, knowledge, discretion in life. Then over here, things that don't mix with wisdom, you have things like pride, arrogance, evil behavior, perverse speech. Now I want you to take these items, that prudence, knowledge, and discretion are over here with wisdom, and then pride, arrogance, evil behavior, perverse speech are against wisdom. Take these items, and I want us to look a few chapters back in chapter 6 of Proverbs at a familiar text. Proverbs chapter 6, verse 16. There are 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked schemes, feet that are quick to rush into evil, a false witness who pours out lies, and a person who stirs up conflict in the community. Of these things that the Lord hates, how many of them have to do with items that we just looked at in Proverbs chapter 8, verse 12 and 13? You've got similar ideas like pride, arrogance, rushing in. It's kind of like not showing discretion or prudence, lying, and then giving false witness or that perverse speech. And then you've also just got evil behavior, which kind of encapsulates all of it. It's all there. It's that continuation of this idea that to seek God, to obey Him, to do what He wants us to do, we must seek and possess wisdom. Walking with wisdom is walking with God. And why do wisdom and God go together? Well, because God created wisdom from the beginning. Proverbs chapter 8, verse 22. The Lord brought me forth as the first of His works, before His deeds of old. I was formed long ages ago, at the very beginning when the world came to be. When there were no watery depths, I was given birth. When there were no springs overflowing with water, before the mountains were settled in place, before the hills, I was given birth. Before He made the world or its fields or any of the dust of the earth, I was there when He set the heavens in place, when He marked out the horizon on the face of the deep, when He established the clouds above and fixed securely the fountains of the deep, when He gave the sea its boundary so the waters would not overstep His command, and when He marked out the foundations of the earth, then I was constantly at His side. I was filled with delight day after day, rejoicing always in His presence, rejoicing in His whole world and delighting in mankind. Wisdom says that before there was anything else, God created wisdom. God and wisdom go together because God brings forth wisdom. To seek God is to seek wisdom. We cannot be servants of the Most High and not have wisdom. The two must go together. It's kind of like a puzzle. You can have all the pieces of a puzzle. You can put the puzzle together. But if you are missing one or two pieces, you kind of look at the picture and you're like, it just doesn't work. The picture doesn't look the same. We'd say it's not complete. The same is true for our faith. Our relationship with God is not complete. The picture is not complete if we do not have wisdom. And then we come to the close of chapter 8. Wisdom has been speaking to us. Wisdom has been calling out to us, saying, listen to what I have to say. Listen to me. Pursue me. And then we looked at the blessings that come from wisdom, what she has to offer. And then we just looked at the history of wisdom, that she was there from the beginning. And then at the close of chapter 8, wisdom puts the ball in our court, where it is now up to us. We have to decide what we are going to do with wisdom. Verse 32, now then, my children, listen to me. Blessed are those who keep my ways. Listen to my instruction and be wise. Do not disregard it. Blessed are those who listen to me, watching daily at my doors, watching at my doorway. For those who find me find life and receive favor from the Lord. But those who fail to find me harm themselves. All who hate me love death. Wisdom gives an invitation to us. Like I said, she puts the ball in our court, so to speak. We have to decide if we are going to listen to wisdom or not. As I said at the beginning, chapter 7 has another woman calling out for our attention, calling out to us. It's this adulterous woman who represents foolishness or folly. And then in chapter 8, we have this other woman calling out to us who represents wisdom. And in each chapter, we're told what each is like. And we're told what the end result is when we listen to that particular person. But we must make a decision. And hopefully we choose to listen to wisdom. And I think we all know that we're to seek wisdom. I'm assuming I haven't said anything earth-shattering this evening. But what does that look like, to seek wisdom? What's the practical application or the takeaway for tonight? So 4 lessons from chapter 8 in regards to seeking wisdom. First, wisdom is calling out to us. Wisdom is seeking our attention. This has been the main idea for this whole wisdom. Wisdom is calling out, and so we have to listen for wisdom. And sometimes this is the hardest part, that we have to listen to wisdom. So many times we think we know the answer to it already. We think we know how things are going to play out. We think we've got it all figured out, so we rush on ahead. And we don't take time to be still and listen. And listening requires being quiet. If we want wisdom, we can't always be talking. We have to listen. And almost to the point where we might even have to humble ourselves and realize that we might be wrong some of the time. So we have to listen. The second thing we have to do is be able to decipher. Like I said, if we look at chapters 7 and 8 together, we realize that we've got competing things for our attention. We've got different people, different items in our world calling out to us for our attention. And so we have to be able to decipher. We have to figure out which one we're going to listen to. We have to figure out which is actual true wisdom. We're going to have to judge for ourselves what we're going to listen to. Are we going to listen to this, or are we going to listen with that? And the third tip is we need to be ready to listen to wisdom anywhere. You know, wisdom can come in many forms. In our Christian context, the first place we probably think of when it comes to looking for wisdom is our Bible. We think, that's the default, perhaps, or that's, first option. You look for wisdom in the Word of God, but we can also find wisdom from other people. Maybe if you're a teenager, maybe you find wisdom from your parents. Maybe it's one another in the church. Maybe we find wisdom from someone who's gone before us in the church, maybe an elder in our congregation. Maybe we also just find wisdom in our own life experiences and trials that we face. Anyone else gained wisdom from choices you've made in the past? And so we have to be ready for wisdom to come to us in many forms. And we have to make sure that we are ready for those different forms and be listening for wisdom. And then we also have to be ready to decipher, not just give in to whatever we hear, but listen for that true wisdom. And then finally, we have to recognize that we never have enough wisdom. I think in any situation, the moment we begin to think that a lesson or advice is not for us, but for someone else, is dangerous. The moment when we get content with things that we are hearing. We cannot assume that we are complete, that we can just begin to coast through life not listening for anything. For it's in those moments when we're coasting and not expecting, I think, when Satan finds us. So there's always room for growth, regardless of physical age or spiritual age. And so tonight, I hope this has been encouraging to you. I hope you were either reminded of some truths you already knew, maybe gained a deeper appreciation of wisdom, or maybe just received new insight into Proverbs chapter 8. Here in a moment, we're going to sing a song of invitation, and if we can help you any way, you can certainly come during that time. But I want to encourage all of us that during the singing of this song, that we will think about where in our life this week can I seek and listen to wisdom. If there's anything we can do for you this evening, please come as we stand and sing.